critic. He was a socialist and a liberal man who has mocked all the silly rituals, superstitions, and dogmatism in this text. Intellectual rubbish is a humorous text, meaning written in a funny way to ridicule and criticize people's vices and stupidities. Bertrand Russell in this text highlights the fact that to avoid silly errors, one need not be a genius but just needs to follow simple rules. Like one can settle a matter by mere observation. The writer Bertrand Russell suggests us to check the facts and not to believe something because somebody would have told us that. The writer gives us an example of a well-known ancient Greek philosopher, Aristotle, who is considered as the father of Western philosophy. He believed that women have fewer teeth than men. In fact, he should have counted his wife's teeth before making such a silly statement. The writer says that thinking that you know, when in fact you don't, is a fatal mistake, meaning a terrible mistake to which we are all prone, meaning we are likely to do that. The writer says that he himself believes that hedgehogs eat black beetles because he has been told that they do. But if he was writing a book on the habits of hedgehogs, he should not commit himself until he had seen one enjoying this unappetizing diet, meaning not so tasty diet. The next thing the writer highlights is that if we have some passionate convictions, meaning strong beliefs, we then fail to understand the contrary. For example, our religious beliefs are superior to others, and if we find anyone with a contrary opinion, then it will make us angry. The writer also says that getting angry at contrary opinions is a sign that somewhere even we don't have any strong evidence or reason to back our own belief. The writer further gives examples about some facts that if someone says that 2 and 2 are 5 or Iceland is on the equator, then we feel pity rather than getting angry. It proves that the most savage controversies are those about matters as to which there is no good evidence either way. So the writer advises that we should check the evidences to support our beliefs before we get angry at any difference of opinion, as we will probably find our belief is going beyond what the evidence warrants, meaning justifies. The writer then suggests that if one wants to get rid of certain dogmatism, meaning unreasonable stubborn beliefs, then he should involve into different social circles. One should interact with people from different walks of life, and this would make one more understanding and accommodating and less dogmatic. Like the writer Bertrand Russell, when he was young, he lived much outside his own country in France, Germany, Italy, and the United States. He found this very profitable to reduce his insular prejudice, meaning dislike of foreign ideas. He could accept people with different ideas, beliefs, and cultures with ease. Here is an example which shows our prejudice. If we don't like tattoos and we see a man who has inked his body, we would immediately dislike him. On the other hand, the man with tattoos too may dislike us, considering us to be boring and orthodox. So, we should be cautious before making any opinions about others, as both parties may be right, but they both cannot be wrong. However, always knowing foreign customs would not be beneficial. Bertrand Russell gives an example of 17th century when the Manchus conquered China. It was a custom among the Chinese for the women to have small feet, and among the Manchus for the men to wear pigtails. Instead of each dropping their own foolish custom, they each adopted the foolish custom of the other, and the Chinese continued to wear pigtails until they shook off the dominion of the Manchus in the revolution of 1911. The writer further suggests another way which will help us to be less dogmatic. We can try to understand the contrary opinions if we have enough psychological imagination. It would be a good plan to imagine an argument with a person having a different bias, meaning belief. This has one advantage, and only one, as compared with actual conversation with opponents. This one advantage is that the method is not subject to the same limitations of time and space, meaning we can have imaginary dialogue with any personality, living or dead. The writer gives an example of Mahatma Gandhi, who was against railways, steamboats and machinery. But in today's era, we won't find anyone who would agree to his beliefs. But if we conduct an imaginary dialogue and try to understand Gandhiji's arguments, it will make one understand his point of view. The writer himself has followed this and has found himself growing less dogmatic and cocksure, meaning stubborn, through realizing the possible reasonableness of a hypothetical opponent, meaning an imaginary opponent. The writer further wants us to be alert of the opinions that flatter our self-esteem, meaning self-respect. He says that any opinion which praises and nourishes our self-esteem can be biased, meaning partial and not the truth. Like, for example, both men and women are convinced that they are better than the opposite sex. So when men would take pride on the fact that most poets and men of science are males, then, if you're a woman, you can retort that so are most criminals. The question is thus inherently insoluble, meaning we cannot get a perfect answer to this, and by nature this question is insoluble. But self-esteem conceals meaning, hides this from most people, meaning people don't agree to the fact due to their self-esteem. Also, people having similar ideas for their own nation believe that their nation is superior to all others, and so they make out that the merits possessed by their nation are really important ones, while its demerits are comparatively trivial, meaning unimportant or negligible. The author further says that it is very difficult to deal with the self-esteem of a man. The only way the author sees to deal with it is to remind oneself that man is a brief episode in the life of a small planet in a little corner of the universe, and that for aught, meaning anything we know, other parts of the cosmos may contain beings as superior to ourselves as we are two jellyfish. The author is trying to make us understand that our life is really small and our existence is so unimportant in comparison to the vastness of the universe that we should not give undue importance to our self-esteem. The author says that apart from self-esteem, the next element, which is a source of error, is fear. The author says that fear sometimes operates directly by inventing rumors of disaster in wartime or by imagining objects of terror such as ghosts. Such rumors surely can lead to errors in our life. Also, by believing in concept of elixir of life, meaning anything divine which can make somebody immortal or get him heaven in afterlife, and hell for enemies, can also indirectly make man fearful. Fear has many forms: fear of death, fear of the dark, fear of the unknown. The writer further suggests that one has to admit his fears and have strong willpower, which would help him to guard against myth-making powers. For example, many people do certain religious rituals with the fear that if they don't do, God would be unhappy and his wrath will cause harm to them. People follow superstitions so that they feel safe. Fear is the main source of superstition and one of the main sources of cruelty. Like animals are sacrificed to please the deities, which is a cruel act done to overcome one's fear. The writer says that wisdom lies in conquering one's fear and pursuing truth with rational behavior. He says that there are two ways of avoiding fear. One is by persuading ourselves that we are immune from disaster, meaning thinking that nothing wrong would happen with us, and the other way is by the practice of sheer courage, meaning to be ready to face what may come. The latter is difficult, and to everybody it becomes impossible at a certain point. The former has, therefore, always been more popular. Thus, to keep oneself immune, people since ancient times have believed in primitive magic, black magic, talismans, meaning a small object used to fetch good luck, for example, wearing some thread or locket of some god, spells or incantations, meaning magical words recited to ensure one's safety or to injure enemies. Though science has now lessened the belief in such magic, but many people place more faith in mascots, meaning something that brings good luck, than they are willing to avow, meaning speak openly. Like people wear lucky stones or buy things that have their lucky number. The author strongly affirms that neither a man, nor a crowd, nor a nation can be trusted to act humanely or to think sanely, meaning wisely under the influence of a great fear. So poltroons, meaning cowards, are more prone to cruelty than brave men and are also more superstitious. Finally, the writer brings out the lighter aspect of superstitions, as they are not always dark and cruel. Sometimes they add to the gaiety of life, meaning happiness of life. The author shares an anecdote with us in which he had received a letter from the god Osiris, who was a self-proclaimed god, meaning a man who had declared that he was a god or the Messiah, and gave him his contact number, whereas others, like him, asked the author to mention their names in his lectures, of course for publicity. Also, the author mentions an amusing incident that happened in the year 1820, when there was a certain prophetess who announced to her numerous followers that she possessed the power of walking on water, and that she proposed to do so at 11 o'clock on a certain morning. At the stated time, the faithful followers assembled in thousands beside the lake. The prophetess spoke to the followers by saying, "Are you all entirely persuaded that I can walk on water?" And the followers with one voice replied, "We are." So the prophetess announced, "In that case, there is no need for me to do so," and all the followers went home much edified. The author thus concludes that the world is varied, interesting, and colorful, and it would lose some of its interest and variety if such beliefs were wholly replaced by cold science. And a wise man can enjoy both the good and intellectual rubbish, meaning false beliefs and baseless opinions which people follow without inquiry, and both can be enjoyed probably in every age. Thus, the Nobel laureate has very keenly tried to emphasize on the need of rational behavior of humans.